Welcome to the UFC 302 immediate reaction show. The card is mere minutes away from kicking off here. And if you are new to this show, this is a show where I record my immediate reaction for every single fight as it concludes. Then once the card finishes up, I package it all together and release it to you guys as soon as the card wraps up, or as close to the card wrapping up, given processing time, editing time, all of that good stuff. But at least it gives me an opportunity, having the fight fresh in my mind, having the post-fight interview fresh in my mind, and giving you guys my thoughts on it, and then showing you guys the odds that ended up hitting for all of these matchups as well, to see which spots you may have missed out on, or for you to gloat in the comment section regarding the big props you may have been able to hone in on and actually hit. So yeah, I love doing this show. It's been a couple weeks since I've been able to do it, and what better way to do it than for a big UFC pay-per-view card like the one that we got for this weekend. So yeah, let's strap in. Let's get going. And first fight of the night, I believe it's a flyweight fight or catchweight bout after Andre Lima missed weight by 4 pounds. He's taking on Mitch Raposo. Let's see if Raposo can pull off the upset here. Andre Lima picks up the split decision victory over Mitch Raposo to kick off this UFC 302 card. It was a leg kicking clinic from the Brazilian fighter as he goes out there and pretty much beats up the legs of Raposo over the course of 3 rounds. I was liking the movement of Raposo. I was liking the activity in terms of just staying in perpetual motion, but the lack of offense coming in return. Great hands. He was landing some good shots with his hands. Maybe that's what that one judge was kind of leaning on, that gave that fight to Raposo. But I really expected some more takedowns from the Raposo side, or at least more attempts. He attempted it twice. It would have been nice if he was able to secure that takedown even more firmly in the second round, minus the fence grab from Lima to work back to his feet. But a little bit more of that approach with takedowns and wearing on Lima up against the cage probably would have paid a lot more dividends than, just utilizing the perpetual motion that he was from that distance. He kind of allowed Lima to, set the pace by throwing the kicks as consistently as he did, which ultimately put Raposo behind there. So I take an L on the prediction there on Raposo, as I was expecting a little bit more of a grapple-heavy game plan from him to really wear on Lima, as I do believe Lima has a little bit of an issue when guys are able to really dictate the pace against him and put him through the grind, whether it's up against the cage with the takedowns. And I thought we were seeing that in his UFC debut against Igor da Silva, until that, unfortunate bite occurrence and all that stuff. So great win for Lima. Great kickboxing, as we always see seen from him. Nasty leg kicks. But I don't think that this guy is as good as most people are making him out to be. Very good kickboxer. I'll give him that. But I think there are fighters in this flyweight division, if he ends up staying at this weight class after missing weight so, absurdly the way that he did. But there are guys that can definitely give him a run for his money. But yeah. Unfortunate result there for Mitch Raposo, but it's ultimately Andre Lima who ends up getting his hand raised. In terms of the props or the odds that cash here, Lima money line, he skyrockets to minus 300 on fight day, and he cashes as the chalky favorite by decision plus 170, and then the over 2.5 cashes at minus 140. I think Raposo is good enough to stay in the UFC. Just a couple things that he needs to change up. Maybe a little bit more reliance on that takedown will allow him to be successful here. But we'll see. This was a tough matchup for him from the jump, hence why he was a big underdog in this spot. I thought it was a winnable fight for him, but he just couldn't get off on certain things. And all credit definitely goes to Lima in terms of establishing the leg kicks the way that he did. So to kick off the card, chalky favorite comes through with Andre Lima battering Mitch Raposo en route to a split decision victory. Aline Perez ultimately gets her hand raised by unanimous decision over Jocelyn Edwards, squashing the beef and bad blood that they had going into this matchup. Obviously, we know about the lead up to this, the scuffle that they had, I believe either at Extreme Couture or the PI, which led to this ultimate booking, and now we see them go out there and scrap it out. And Joe Rogan said it perfectly at the end. Their violence solves everything, and we saw them quickly embrace after the fight was done with. Solid first round from Perez. Perez, a couple of reversals from either side, but it seemed like Perez, even though she wasn't the one finishing the first round on top, she landed enough damage in that top position when she did have it that she should have won that round. The second round, she got outgrinded, but that big spinning back fist that she landed likely scored that round in her favor. And then the third round, kind of close, but I did think that Perez landed some good enough shots there as well. 30-27, 29-28, either one of those scorecards. Either way, it should have been Perez that got her hand raised, and that's exactly what ended up happening. All right, let's check out the odds that cash here. Perez moneyline -195 comes through by decision, +100, and the over 2.5 cashes at -280. Favorites are now 2-0 to kick off this UFC 302 card. Let's see if they can keep it up in this next matchup. An early contender for fight of the night, Basel Hafez goes out there and wins a unanimous decision victory over Mickey Gall in a fight that had some huge moments for both guys, but ultimately it is Hafez who lands the bigger shots and is able to accrue more rounds there and ends up getting the win. What more can we say? That was just an absolutely crazy fight. Hafez was landing big shots from the jump. Obviously, it looked like he was slowing down the later the matchup went. And Mickey Gall's striking seemed to be improved from what we've seen in the past, but he just wasn't really confident enough. And it seemed like the few times that he was stung, and even though he didn't get dropped, it seems like the times that he was stung, Cormier pulled it, pretty much nailed it. You could see Gall backing up and kind of circling and trying to stay away from the big shots that were coming his way from Hafez, but that seemed to be the difference maker, and probably why we didn't see Gall throw even more, because it seemed like his straight shots down the pipe were landing with some solid emphasis and solid power, but he was unable to really hurt Hafez enough to, swing the judges in his favor or anything like that. Hafez, sneaky one, I believe it was in that second round where Gall hurt him or hit him very hard. He points to the ground and says, come on, and then once Gall throws a big shot, we see Hafez change levels and take the fight to the ground. Absolutely hilarious stuff there. You're not allowed to point at the ground and tell a guy to come on and then, change levels when the guy obliges with what you're saying. So, regardless, Hafez still goes out there. He gets the first win of his UFC career. A good win for him. All right, let's check out the odds that cashed. The big favorite comes through as Basel Hafez cashes at -390, by decision +170, and the over 2.5 cashes at -110. Fun fight. Hafez is going to have to clean up some things if he hopes to make it deeper into the rankings here, or at least get into the rankings to begin with. And Mickey Gall, there is a certain level of opponent that they need to give him, and even though they have similar records in terms of amount of fights that they had, it was clear that Hafez was just a step above. You got to give Gall a guy slightly a step down, if anything. Again, like I said in my previews, Gall was a guy that was thrown in or catapulted into the UFC with the whole CM Punk thing, and no fighter would have turned down that opportunity, but it probably did not allow him to really evolve into the fighter that he needed to be before coming into the UFC. And we'll see if the UFC gives him another shot. He's had a tough go of things as of late. Maybe he can be a little bit more active now that he has his injuries taken care of. Maybe the UFC has a soft spot for him as well because they brought him in for the CM Punk thing. So hopefully he's able to come back. And Basel Hafez, I think a lot of people will be waiting for his next fight. Great win for Hafez here in a possible fight of the night contender. It was a somewhat competitive fight, but ultimately Jake Matthews comes out with a unanimous decision victory, a 30-27 and 2 29-28 as he defeats Phil Rowe by, like I said, getting the judges' scorecards in his favor. Now, very weird performance there from Phil Rowe, who I really expected to utilize his range a little bit better. He does not do a great job when they do, or his opponents actually do enter the pocket. He just likes to lean back, keep his guard high, and allow those punches to hit, even if it hits on the guard. But if he utilizes better footwork, he'd be able to get out of that range and his opponents will be whiffing at air, and he might even be able to open up some solid counter opportunities for himself. When he lets his 1-2 go down the pipe, it's very effective, as we saw him hurt Matthews on a couple of occasions, but he just really couldn't close the show as his opponent was crashing the pocket relentlessly and landing big shots. It seemed like there may have been a big shot in round one that kind of kept Rowe a little bit flustered, and that's why he was unable to get off on much success in rounds 2 and round 3. Phil Rowe is a guy that looks like he has a lot of physical potential, like just his frame, especially at this 170-pound division. He could be very effective if he can just get his striking down a little bit better, especially his fight IQ. He's very skilled, has solid pop on his shots when he throws them, but when guys are able to just crowd him and smother his space, he really doesn't know how to get out of those spots that well. He kind of climbs up and allows his opponent to get off on their offense, and that's what Jake Matthews was successful in doing in here. So a veteran performance from Jake Matthews, who's been with the UFC for over 11 or 12 years at this point in time. Phil Rowe still trying to find his footing. Very unfortunate loss for him in this spot. He has the tools, just needs to really put them together here. All right, let's check out the odds that cash. Matthews cashes as the minus 165 favorite by decision, plus 155, and the over 2.5 cashes at minus 170. It seems all the favorites have come through thus far. Got a big underdog in this next one here in Joe Solecki. Let's see if he can go out there and pull off the upset against Grant Dawson. We knew it would be boring, but Grant Dawson goes out there and does the damn thing, winning this fight on the scorecards relatively easily against Joe Solecki. A little bit of a scare at the beginning of that fight, but I believe in that first round when we saw Grant Dawson give up his back during that moment where I believe Solecki was looking for the takedown, then Dawson was defending, and it looked like he gave up his back. It seemed like he wanted to bait Solecki into taking the back, because as soon as Solecki tried to hop on or at least get one hook in, you could see Dawson kind of shift his weight to one side, and that caused Solecki to fall off, and that's where Dawson was able to secure that top position, put himself into a guillotine position, but he stayed calm, cool, and collected, and knew that it was just a matter of time before he was able to get out of that spot, and then from there got to that rinse and repeat style to go out there and just do what Grant Dawson does best. Put guys into deep waters and drown them. And even though he was unable to get the finish here, there was no moment, past that first guillotine attempt from Solecki that he had any sort of success in that matchup. That's why Dawson sometimes is just worth the chalk straight up at times, because this guy can go out there and grind with the best of them. Unless he's facing somebody with some big knockout power, that's something that we have to worry about at times, as his two losses have come, within 30 seconds of the fight starting against Bobby Green and then Hugh Pulley from his regional MMA days. But for the most part, Dawson is one of the best grinders, top 5 grinders in the UFC. Could potentially find himself fighting for a title sometime soon, but he might have to get some wins or some finishes under his belt if the UFC is going to be looking at him. As we've seen fighters in the past take their time, or at least the UFC give fighters more fights before they eventually set them up for a title shot, because they just took such a slow and steady rise to that top, going out there and just decisioning most of their opponents. But without a doubt, I know Dawson is one of the best fighters in the UFC. May not be pretty, may not be entertaining, but he is very solid when he goes out there and gets his game going. Very good scrambler, very good wrestler, high-level jiu-jitsu, and just does a great job in terms of smothering and controlling his opponents and staying busy enough that the referee is unable to stand them up, because he's just landing big enough shots, rolling those elbows in. Beautiful work from Grant Dawson. Again, probably the least entertaining fight on the card thus far, which has had 5 decisions up until this point. But he goes out there and does what a minus 500 should do, pretty much win every second of that matchup. All right, speaking of minus 500, let's check out the odds that cash. Minus 550 is what Dawson closed at. That comes through by decision, plus 100, and then the over 2.5 cashes at minus 175. I felt Dawson was the easiest pick this night, and that's exactly what he was able to do. A little bit of a scare, but if you know Grant Dawson, he would be able to work out of those submission spots, especially guillotines, against a guy like Joe Solecki, who is high level with his jiu-jitsu, but I just think he's a little bit overrated in most of his matchups. So good win for Dawson. Very happy about that. Can underdogs snap the favorite winning streak in this next bout? Let's see. We finally get to finish the first one of the night as Jailton Almeida goes out there and secures a rear naked choke over Alexander Romanov, cashing as another big favorite. Favorites now 6-0 on the card, but Almeida definitely needed that after a little bit of a weird run where he had a 25-minute decision victory over Derek Lewis, and then he had that loss to Curtis Blades last time around. Getting back into the win column here emphatically, that's exactly what this former hot prospect really needed. yeah, there's nothing really to say. There isn't really much that happened other than him getting the takedown right off the jump. Even though he's giving up so much size and weight to a lot of these guys, he's still so strong and still able to get these guys to the ground and then work to dominant positions where he can eventually find finishes or at least smother these guys and keep them on their backs. Almeida's still a heavyweight that we should keep our eyes on. So I wouldn't just write him off after that loss to Curtis Blades. Good learning lesson for him. Let's see how we can bounce back and maybe get some more momentum going on heading out of this UFC 302 card. All right, let's check out the odds that cash. Almeida, big favorite again, minus 330, comes through by submission, plus 140, round 1, plus 210, round 1 sub, plus 370, and the under 1.5 cashes at minus 120. Now, he did call out Cyril Gane subliminally there as he says that, hey, Dana, I've never been to France. I'd be down to go to France. And it seems the UFC is going back to France in September. And it seems that, every time they go there, they're always going to have a headliner with Cyril Gane. The first time he went and headlined against Tai Tuivasa, then he headlined against Sergey Spivak. He's been sitting on the sidelines ever since that matchup. And now this seems to be the matchup that, at least Jailton Almeida wants. I don't know if Cyril Gane would want this matchup, but it would be a great matchup for both guys to, considering where they're at in the rankings. And again, I don't know why Cyril Gane is not fighting more often. Maybe they're just trying to save him for the France cards every time out. He's going to come up short against guys that can go out there and effectively grapple him, as we've seen in the past. But yeah, he probably doesn't want a guy like Jailton Almeida because he'll definitely silence that France crowd if that's what ends up happening here. Alexander Romanov going out there continuously showing us that he's just a mid-tier heavyweight at this point in time. He can go out there and now grapple the guys that he's been beating, the Rocky Martinezes, but he's going to go out there and get beaten by the far superior fighters. The Alexander Volkovs, the Jailton Almeidas. Those guys will always be a very tough spot for him. But yeah, good win for Jailton Almeida here. Let's see if the next Almeida can get the job done as well. Probably the most talked about fight this entire week was the prelim headliner in terms of which side people were picking. We did see the odds swing in favor of Cesar Almeida come closer to fight time. He was earlier this week around plus 115, plus 120, got swung to about minus 120, but it's ultimately Roman Kopylov who's able to go out there and get the dub here. It was a split decision as there was one judge that kind of favored the damage that Almeida was landing a little bit more than the control time that Kopylov was getting, but I was very much unimpressed with Almeida's ability to work back to his feet as we've seen him do in the past. So it's so weird whenever you see fighters showcase that they've kind of shored up a hole in their game and then they go out there and just look like nothing that we saw from the tape that they showcased, right? There were fights where we would see Cesar Almeida get taken down, but he's immediately scooting his butt back to the cage, working his base, getting back to his feet. And it seemed like he should have been able to do that against a guy in Kopylov who was holding on for dear life from that top position. But for some reason, he looked like a fish out of water off of his back in this spot where we've seen, the complete opposite on tape from his last two fights. So very weird circumstance there for Almeida, who was getting off on tremendous damage when he was in the striking realm. He did get hurt a bit by Kopylov in the early going, but I knew the tide would swing in the striking favor for Almeida the deeper that this fight got. But that's where we saw Kopylov go to his wrestling, which again, very weird decisions from Almeida. There was one of those takedowns, I believe, in the third round where Almeida, pretty much gave his leg, like he stuffed the takedown well, but then gave his leg for some reason, and that allowed Kopylov to complete the takedown. Very low fight IQ movements there from Almeida, who up until this point showed high fight IQ tendencies. So very peeved at that result for Cesar Almeida, who looked like a much better fighter on tape than he actually showed on this card. Very solid striking as we expected, but we need to see him continue to improve that takedown defense, even get-ups. And again, it seems like he has, but I'm not sure why he didn't show it this time around. So props to anybody that waited on that Kopylov line to get the plus money that he ended up coming through as. But yeah, hats off to the Kopylov bettors. I'll take an elder as I was on the Cesar Almeida side. All right, let's check out the odds that cash here. Kopylov money line plus 100 comes through by decision plus 380, and the over 2.5 cashes at plus 100 again. Head scratcher of a fight in terms of the decisions that Almeida was making. Yeah, is what it is. All right, that brings us to our main card. I believe Kopilov, the first underdog to cash on the night. So there you guys go. But plenty of fights still to go. Let's see how this main card ends up going. Let's go. A slow start to the fight for both guys with some eye pokes, and it doesn't seem like the new gloves are helping at all. But Randy Brown still manages to go out there and get the decision victory over Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. That second round, it was a little bit sketchy for him as he almost got a rear naked choke there, but he did a great job in terms of tucking his chin and ensuring that Zaleski was unable to get on the neck, and it was showcased great improvements, growth, and development from the Randy Brown side of things, who's mainly known as a striker, but he did a great job in terms of protecting that neck, showcasing his own jiu-jitsu skills, but at the end of the day, it was his striking that landed more damaging blows on Zaleski and ultimately got him the judge's decision 29-28 on all three scorecards. Let's check out the odds that cashed here. Brown comes through with another favorite at minus 180, by decision plus 175, and the over 2.5 cashes at minus 145. Great call out from Randy Brown afterwards, as well as he calls out Jeff Neal in a fight that would surely be a striker's delight. I don't know if Jeff Neal wants any of that smoke right now, although he is a good technical striker. I think he would possibly struggle with the length and reach of Randy Brown, and seeing this version of Brown, you see that he's very much growing and developing and becoming a much better fighter than he originally was when he came into the UFC. Now, one thing I wanted to point out regarding this matchup, look at the defense, movement, and range management of Randy Brown, and then look at what we saw earlier this week or earlier on this card with Phil Rowe. You know, Brown does a great job in terms of getting out of range whenever his opponent is throwing in return, whereas Phil Rowe would plant his feet and just move backwards with his head, and that would still get him clipped and hurt by most of his opponents. That's why Randy Brown, is a better skilled fighter in terms of just utilizing his range, his reach, and his footwork advantage compared to a guy like Phil Rowe, who's still a little bit younger in his MMA career and still trying to establish his range and his striking game. So that's one thing that I want people to focus on, or at least take note of. There are guys that might have that body archetype where they can go out there and establish their range and their reach, but most guys might not have that fight IQ nor that experience to actually do it effectively. And we saw a perfect example of that here with Phil Rowe earlier, and now Randy Brown showcasing how it should actually be. So good win for Randy Brown. The 37-year-old Elizeu Zaleski, unfortunately taking an L. It's unfortunate that he was not as active through the last half of his career, as that's probably the best years of his career that have kind of gone to waste. And this probably knocks him down enough rungs that he'll likely stay out of the rankings and out of any sort of title contention as well. So I do like the progression of Randy Brown. He's still young enough to continue to climb up those rankings, and Jeff Neal would be the perfect guy to give him a step forward in this spot. So good win for Randy Brown. Let's see if another favorite can get it done in this next matchup. It was a gutsy performance from Nico Price, but he pulls it out and is now 2-0 over Alex Morono as he goes out there and wins a unanimous decision. I believe he dropped the first round, but after that, it seemed like Morono's gas tank was running on empty, and we saw Nico Price really start to take over, utilize some takedowns, but also great footwork, forward pressure, pressure striking, staying in Morono's face, not really giving him any time to breathe. We even saw it in the third round where Morono seemed to accidentally graze the cup of Nico Price, and Nico told the ref, hey, cut it out. Let's just get right back to action, because he wanted to take full advantage of the depleting gas tank of Morono, something that we are not used to seeing out of a fighter like that. So that was very surprising to see Morono slow down the amount that he did, and seeing him jump for as many guillotines as he did too. He has been successful with the guillotine in the past, and he normally only jumps for it when he feels like he really has a bite on it, and it didn't seem like there was any point other than that one where they're in that weird position up against the cage in the second round. But still, hats off to Nico Price from bouncing back from two back-to-back knockout losses and then going out there and securing this rivalry over Alex Morono. Again, Morono did take this on 4 weeks' notice, but still is a guy that normally stays in the gym, stays ready. So it's very unfortunate and very weird to see him gas out the way that he did. All right, let's check out the odds that cash here. The second underdog comes through on the night. Nico Price cashes at plus 215, by decision plus 750, a method of victory he normally does not win by. And the over 2.5 cashes at plus 130. No post-fight interview here. Kind of lackluster-ish fight. Just Price taking advantage of a guy that was a gas bag the 6th minute into this matchup. So good win for Price. Good confidence booster for him as well. But I'm sure that we'll see Moreno get back into action with the full training camp and probably get back to his winning ways. But an unfortunate result for him here as Nico Price picks up a unanimous decision victory over Moreno. Michal Oleksiejczuk goes out there and lands a big knockdown on Kevin Holland to start off the fight, but unfortunately for him, poor fight IQ left his arm in there a little bit longer, and Kevin Holland was able to cinch up an armbar where it seemed like it broke or snapped the arm or at least dislocated the arm of Michal Oleksiejczuk, although the replays they were showing, I believe it was already broken or dislocated at that point, so I wish they kind of rewinded it a little bit further back so we can see it actually happen, because I think I saw the point that it happened, but they had not shown it in the replays. But there was obviously that last moment where Kevin Holland puts it under his armpit and torques a little bit more, which is when the referee ultimately steps in to stop the fight. But very, very unfortunate situation for Oleksiejczuk, who was close to pulling off an upset as a near plus 250 underdog. Kevin Holland going out there and doing a great job of bouncing back from that 2-fight losing streak that he had to Michael Page and the other name is Jack Della Maddalena. So good win for him to get back into the win column here. All right, let's check out the odds that cash. Kevin Holland minus 290 comes through. Another favorite, chalk him up via submission plus 260. Round 1 plus 270. Round 1 submission plus 600, and the under 1.5 cashes at plus 115. Again, very poor fight IQ from the Michal Oleksiejczuk side. He had what he needed, which was a knockdown against Holland, but he ends up going into the guard with a BJJ black belt and ends up paying for it. Talking about Kevin Holland, his post-fight interview always delivering on the goods there, but the best thing that he said, I'm a gatekeeper, right? Keep me around and I'll fight whoever it is. And it's great that he's kind of accepted that role in the UFC. And he's done a good enough job in terms of not going on anything longer than a 3-fight losing streak or a 2-fight losing streak. Racking up some wins, keeping guys out of the rankings who shouldn't be cracking the rankings. But he's always a fighter that's going to show up and fight anybody at 170 or 185 pounds. Fun fighter, entertaining fighter, but he knows he's not championship material at this stage of the game. And it's great for him to go out there and actually recognize that. Hats off to Kevin Holland. Great, I wouldn't say great performance, but great submission. And let's see how he ends up bouncing back later this year. For Michal Oleksiejczuk, gotta go back, fix that fight IQ, keep the fight in the standing realm where you have most success. Does he stick around in the UFC? We'll find out, but a very unfortunate result for him there. And what proved to be another classic Sean Strickland fight. He goes out there and wins a split decision over Paulo Costa, showcasing that his forward-moving style against power punchers is always a tough call when you got a guy like Paulo Costa or Jared Cannonier or Alex Pereira or even Dricus du Plessis who can throw with heat in return. And that's going to cause some judges to have them scratching their head in terms of which way to score it. I personally, although I was backing Costa, I still believe Strickland deserved to win that fight. He was landing a lot of good shots down the pipe. He really shut down that calf kicking game of Costa in the second round, and Costa just wasn't throwing enough in return. I was very puzzled by Costa's approach in terms of targeting the body as much as he did. Obviously it's a little bit harder to hit the head of Strickland, but I was expecting him to let go with a little more punches to the head. And I think even if he was just getting it off the guard of Strickland, we've seen it in the past where guys hit the guard of Strickland and the judges actually still score that in favor of Strickland's opponents. And I felt like Costa could have some success in that realm as well. It fooled one judge, but I do think Strickland was the rightful winner in that matchup. Very weird approach from Costa. Again, the body work made no sense to me. Cardio is not an issue at all for Strickland. That guy's going to keep going for 5, 10, 15, 25 rounds if he needs to. So that was kind of puzzling to me. Maybe that was to eventually set up shots to the head, but he never really got to the point where he was biting down on his mouthpiece and letting go to the head. But the calf kicks, I love the calf kicks off the jump, but it seems like Strickland's one of those guys that it just does not affect. So he did his best, but Strickland proving that his, forward moving Pressure heavy style is always going to be very difficult for a lot of opponents to deal with. So good win for Sean Strickland there to bounce back after that loss to Dricus du Plessis back in January. All right, let's quickly talk about the odds that cash here. Strickland cashes at minus 255, by decision plus 150, and the over 2.5 cashes at minus 200 as well. Strickland calling for a title shot once again, and I believe UFC 305 in August is scheduled for Perth, and Dricus wants to fight on that card, and I believe they're trying to get Adesanya to sign on the dotted line, but nothing confirmed as of yet. If they don't end up getting Izzy to sign on the dotted line there, I would love to see Strickland rematch Dricus, considering it was such a close fight, and it was a great fight as well. So it would be great to see him fight for the title again. He's, fighting all comers and coming out on top against most of them, and I think he's more than deserved to go out there and get another title shot as well, especially if Izzy is still on the sidelines here. But he reigns supreme tonight as he picks up a split, which should have been a unanimous decision victory over Paulo Costa. It was a much sweatier fight than the odds indicated for Islam Makhachev, but he still comes out with the victory as he gets a round 5 submission victory over Dustin Poirier as he sinks in, I believe it was an anaconda choke or a Darce choke. Let me get the actual submission here. I don't recall which side the lock was on. So Darce choke, so it was up on the far side from the armpit. Great win for Makhachev there. Obviously, he had to battle through some adversity. Judges' scorecards, there were 2 judges that had Makhachev up 3-1, and then there was the final judge that actually had a 2-2 going into the final round, but it did not matter at the end of the day as Makhachev utilized a beautiful foot sweep, almost not even a foot sweep, but like a throw with his leg, and then got that front headlock position, and from there was able to secure that beautiful choke. That just showcases why Makhachev is the best lightweight on the planet currently. Again, some might give him a little bit of a hard time for this, that he didn't get it done a lot earlier, like a lot of people were expecting, but you got to give him more credit for being able to battle through fighting a guy like Dustin Poirier that was putting on more of a performance than people expected him to. So credit to Poirier, improved takedown defense. His submission defense has been through the roof, especially over his last 2 fights, ensuring that he doesn't get rear naked choked by some of his opponents anymore. But it was that Darce choke that ended up getting him, even put him out a little bit right after he tapped as well. But Makhachev just showcasing why he is the best lightweight on the planet. Beautiful work there as well throughout that entire fight. When the takedowns were incoming, Makhachev did a good job in terms of staying competitive in the striking realm. He was throwing in combinations. That knee, I believe in the 3rd round, I could be off in terms of that, but there was that spot where he landed the big knee and landed an uppercut after that busted Dustin's nose, and then from there was able to get some good control time as well. But he's not just a grappler. Obviously, that's where he does his best work, but he can be competitive in the striking realm with a lot of these guys. Unfortunate result there for Dustin Poirier. Probably his last hurrah at a title. You could probably still have some novelty fights if he wants to stick around, if McGregor calls his name. But we'll talk about that after I drop the odds that cashed here. So Makhachev, minus 560 comes through as the chalky favorite. By submission, minus 115. Round 5, plus 270. Round 5 sub, plus 1500. And the over 1.5 cashes at minus 180. So great work there all in all for I think I actually got that messed up. Round 5 was plus 1500. Round 5 sub was plus 2200. So great work there from Makhachev to actually still secure that finish, as a lot of people expected him to get the submission there if it were to happen at all. Now, let's talk about some of the post-fight stuff there. From Makhachev, says he wants to go up to 170 pounds and try to be champ. We know that the title is actually being defended in July with Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad. We know the likeliest scheduling for Makhachev would be wanting to fight in October in Abu Dhabi, as that seems to be his location that he always likes to fight in. I think that would be too quick of a turnaround no matter who ends up coming out on top between Edwards or Muhammad. I know Muhammad is pretty well tied to the Khabib camp, so I don't know if they would even want to fight each other, but considering the legacy and stakes on the line, it is something that could possibly happen if Muhammad ends up coming out on top. But I think October, they need to line up Arman Sarukian versus Islam Makhachev. I know Islam has a win over him already, but Sarukian is clearly improved since that. If you guys remember, that was Sarukian's UFC debut to fight a guy like Islam Makhachev, and to go out there and put the run together that he has since then, I think it's you got to give Sarukian that shot, especially with the full training camp. Makhachev will have about 4.5 months to train, recover, and prepare, and all that for that fight. But yeah, Sarukian has definitely got to be the next one up. And then Poirier, talking about retirement, talking about potentially hanging things up. But I think the commentators hit it on the head there in terms of if Chandler or Conor call him out after that matchup, he might want to, lace it up one more time, considering the payday that would come with it. And he showed in this fight, he can still be competitive. Like, he could still beat, some of the top 5 guys that are out there. It just all comes down to what his goal is. Seeing that, the UFC gold is not really attainable for him at this stage of his career. So, very unfortunate run for him there. All right. Let's talk about the recap here real quick. Let's put a bow on this thing. There were no knockouts on this 12-fight card. There were 3 submissions, 9 decisions. Favorites went 10-2 on the night. And then the performer of the night for me, it seemed like a dull night throughout. The fight of the night probably goes to Makhachev and Poirier. That was a great back-and-forth fight. But in terms of a single performance on the night, I think the best one was probably Jailton Almeida over Alexander Romanov. He was the one that stopped the streak of the decisions that started the card. He goes out there and completely dominates the Romanov, and then eventually gets that rear naked choke. I think you give him the performer of the night. He was the most dominant. He was the one that made it look easiest. Kevin Holland got dropped, and then the other finish was the Makhachev fight. But, I wouldn't say he had the most standout performance. He did battle through adversity, but Jailton Almeida single-handedly, in my opinion, on the entire card, he looked like the best winner on this entire event, and I think he's more than deserving of that performer of the night title there. What was your performer, or who was your performer of the night? Let me know which of these odds you guys ended up hitting on as well. And any of your thoughts that you had on this UFC 302 card, which kicks off 4 straight events for the UFC in June. Next weekend, we're back at it for UFC Louisville, which is headlined by a middleweight fight between Jared Cannonier and Nasruddin Imavov. And then the month ends off at June 29th with the big Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler card. So a ton to digest. Next week is action-packed. Not only do we have the UFC Louisville card, but I got 5 regional shows I'll be breaking down as well. So I'll be doing a MMA Lawcast bonus episode for you guys covering one of those events, but the rest of those will be strictly on the Patreon page. So if you guys want access to that, I'll start breaking those down very shortly. But otherwise, I will see you guys on Monday for the MMA Lawcast for UFC Louisville, breaking down the full card for you guys. All right, let me know how you guys did, and I will see you guys on Monday. Peace.